The world was calm before the sky changed. In New York, children played in the parks, their laughter echoing between tall buildings. In Karachi, shopkeepers arranged fruits and spices in the marketplace, the colors bright under the hot sun. In Tokyo, workers hurried home as neon lights began to glow. It was an ordinary day just like any other. Then, in a single hour, everything became different. At first, people thought it was a strange weather event. Clouds stretched across the horizon, forming unnatural shapes. A deep shadow fell across cities. Farmers in the field stopped their work, staring upward. Pilots flying commercial planes began to send confused reports to their control towers. The sky was not filled with clouds. It was filled with ships, millions of them. They were black, sharp, and endless. They blocked the stars, the sun, and even the moon. Some were massive, shaped like mountains floating in the sky. Others were small and fast, swarming like insects. They moved in formation, silent and terrifying, as if a storm of metal had descended upon Earth. The first to see them clearly were astronomers. At observatories around the world, scientists watched their monitors in disbelief. What they had thought were asteroids moving toward Earth were not rocks at all. They were ships. They had been traveling through space in perfect silence, unseen until they were almost here. In one observatory in Chile, an old astronomer dropped his pen and whispered, "They are not from Earth." Within minutes, the news spread. Social media exploded with shaky phone recordings of the sky. People flooded the streets, pointing, screaming, and taking videos. Children cried. Mothers pulled their families indoors. Drivers abandoned their cars on highways just to look upward. Governments across the planet went into emergency meetings. Leaders argued, soldiers prepared, and generals tried to understand what was happening. Was this contact? Was this invasion? No one had answers. The President of the United States was rushed to a secure bunker. So was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. In Beijing, Moscow, Islamabad, and every capital city, leaders were locked in war rooms surrounded by glowing screens. The United Nations held a rushed emergency session. Delegates shouted over one another in dozens of languages. Some demanded peace talks, others demanded immediate defense. The Secretary General stood pale and trembling. The sound of the alien fleet above Earth shook the glass windows of the building itself. Fear spread faster than the news. Ordinary people began to panic. Grocery stores were stormed. Shelves emptied in hours. Gas stations overflowed with cars. Some prayed in the streets. Others packed their belongings and tried to flee to the countryside. But there was nowhere to flee. The ships filled every part of the sky, from horizon to horizon. They hovered above oceans, mountains, and deserts. They circled every continent. There was no safe place left on Earth. The first message, then the world heard their voices. A low vibration shook every radio, television, and phone. Screens across the globe went black, then displayed the same burning symbol, a silver circle with 3 jagged lines through it. A voice followed. It was cold, mechanical, and full of power. "We are the Trajan Collective. We have conquered thousands of worlds. Now we claim yours. Do not resist. Do not fight. Surrender. And some of you may live as servants. Resist and you will all be destroyed." The message repeated in every human language. When it ended, silence fell across Earth. But it was not peaceful silence, it was the silence of fear. In small towns and great cities, people looked to one another with wide eyes. Children asked parents if the voice was lying. Parents had no answers. Soldiers gripped their rifles tightly. Leaders ordered their militaries to prepare for war, but inside many wondered if war was even possible. Human reactions. In Washington, D.C., a general slammed his hand on the table. "We must launch everything we have. Every missile, every plane, every weapon." Another general shook his head. "Against millions of ships? They will burn us before our weapons reach them." In Moscow, an admiral leaned over the map of the world. They came with numbers beyond imagination. "This is not war, it is extermination." In Islamabad, a scientist in the Defense Council whispered, "Why Earth? Why us?" But the question had no answer. On the streets, humanity felt smaller than it ever had before. For centuries, people had thought of Earth as vast. Now it seemed fragile, a tiny blue planet surrounded by an endless black storm. The waiting hours turned into a day. The aliens did not attack at once. They floated above Earth in silence, watching, studying. Some ships lowered into the atmosphere, moving slowly across continents like shadows of death. People watched them from rooftops, hills, and windows. The silence was worse than an attack. It was like waiting for lightning to strike, knowing it could fall anywhere at any moment. In Paris, a group of university students stood on the roof of their dormitory, staring at the ships. "Do you think they will talk to us again?" one asked. Another shook his head. "No, they will only kill us," but none of them moved. They could not look away. In Africa, tribes in the desert gathered together, praying under the stars that were no longer visible. In South America, villagers locked their doors and lit candles. In the skyscrapers of Hong Kong, businessmen abandoned meetings and simply stared out of glass windows. Their faces pale, the entire world waited. The first descent finally, the silence ended. Across the skies, massive doors opened in the alien warships. Strange pods glowing with green light detached from the ships and fell like meteors. Thousands of them. They streaked through the atmosphere, leaving burning trails across the horizon. Each pod landed with a thunderous crash, shaking the ground. Trees snapped, rivers rippled, and dust rose high into the air. The land trembled as if the planet itself was afraid. People screamed and ran from the landing sites. Cars jammed the roads, horns blaring as families tried to escape. Soldiers rushed to set up barricades around cities. Tanks rolled into position. Fighter jets lifted off from air bases, ready to strike the pods, but nothing could prepare them for what came next. The pods split open with metallic shrieks. From inside, armored figures stepped out. They were tall, with glowing eyes and weapons that hummed with energy. Their movements were precise, like machines. They stood in formation, thousands of them scanning the world around them. In New York, one pod opened in Central Park. Joggers and tourists who had been watching from a distance screamed and scattered. Police officers drew their weapons, hands shaking. Children cried as their parents dragged them away. In Cairo, a pod landed near the pyramids. Dust rose into the air as armored figures emerged, standing against the ancient stones. Tourists ran for their lives while Egyptian soldiers prepared to defend the site. In Tokyo, a pod crashed into Shinjuku, crushing cars beneath it. The aliens stepped out, towering over the people. Everywhere it was the same. Alien warriors had arrived on Earth. Fear across the globe television channels broadcasted the landings live. Reporters spoke in trembling voices as armored invaders marched across streets. In underground shelters, families huddled together, watching the images on small screens. A father in Brazil whispered to his children, "Do not be afraid. Stay quiet. Stay strong." A grandmother in India prayed softly, her hands shaking as she clutched her rosary beads. In Germany, a soldier kissed a photograph of his wife before climbing into a tank. In every country, humanity prepared for its last stand. The world believed the end had come the moment before, but then, something unexpected began to happen. The first alien soldiers raised their weapons, aiming them at the humans before them. Electricity crackled along their arms. The people screamed, bracing for the blast, and then something flickered across their armor. A strange glow. The humans froze, staring. The alien soldiers looked down at themselves. Their armor began to smoke. Their weapons dimmed. Their bodies shook, as if some unseen force was tearing them apart. And before anyone could understand, the impossible happened. The alien soldiers began to burn, not with fire, but with a strange light, like glowing embers carried on the wind. One by one, they started to fall. The moment was so strange that even the bravest soldiers forgot to breathe. Alien soldiers, tall and powerful, had stepped onto Earth as conquerors. They had weapons humming with energy, armor shining like liquid metal, and a terrifying confidence in their movements. Humanity had been ready to die. Parents held children close. Soldiers aimed guns but expected them to be useless. Leaders whispered prayers in their war rooms, but then the aliens began to glow. At first it was faint, a shimmer like heat waves rising from asphalt. The glow spread across their armor, flickering with sparks of orange and red. Smoke hissed from their bodies, curling upward into the night air. They looked down at themselves in shock. Their weapons slipped from their hands, clattering onto the ground. Their glowing eyes flickered like candles in the wind. And then, before the world's eyes, they began to collapse. The fall of the invaders in New York. The alien soldiers who had landed in Central Park staggered. Their bodies cracked open as if something inside them was burning from within. A crowd of humans, frozen in fear only seconds ago, now watched in disbelief. One alien let out a mechanical roar, reaching toward a human police officer. But before his armored hand could touch, his entire body burst into bright light. In seconds, nothing remained except a pile of glowing embers floating away like ash. The police officer, shaking, whispered, "They're turning to dust." The scene was the same across the world. In Cairo, Egyptian soldiers lowered their rifles as the invaders crumbled into glowing fragments beside the pyramids. The ancient stones reflected the eerie light of the burning aliens. One soldier dropped to his knees, unable to believe his eyes. In Tokyo, people hiding in the streets peeked from behind cars and buildings. They saw the giant armored figures collapse, their glowing embers scattering in the wind. A little boy tugged his mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mama, look, they're gone." In Moscow, tanks stood ready to fire, but there was no need. The invaders disintegrated before the weapons could be used. Soldiers cheered, confused and relieved at the same time. Everywhere across every land, the same miracle unfolded. The mighty Trajan warriors, feared across the galaxy, could not stand on Earth's soil. They turned to embers within seconds. Shock and silence. For a long time, the world was silent. No one knew what to say. Humans who had prepared to die now stood unharmed. Soldiers who had gripped their weapons tightly now loosened their hands. Families who had prayed in fear now opened their eyes. The invaders were gone, yet the fear remained, because the question was clear. Why? Why had the aliens, so powerful in appearance, collapsed the moment they touched Earth? In a bunker deep underground, the President of the United States stared at the glowing screen showing live footage. His generals looked at him, waiting for orders. Finally, the President said softly, "Do nothing. Just watch. Something is protecting us." In Moscow, the Russian leader asked his scientists, "Is it radiation? A virus? A weapon?" The scientists shook their heads. "It is something we do not understand." In Beijing, the premier sat in silence, his eyes locked on the screen. Then he whispered to himself, "The Earth does not want them here." Humanity begins to believe. In cities and towns, people began to leave their hiding places. Slowly, carefully, they stepped outside and looked around. The streets that had been filled with terror were now covered in glowing embers. Children picked them up, only to watch the ashes fade into the wind. A mother in Brazil held her daughter's hand and whispered, "Maybe we are safe." In Germany, a man shouted, "They cannot touch us." His voice echoed through the crowd, giving hope. In India, crowds gathered in temples, churches, and mosques, giving thanks. Some believed it was divine protection. Others thought it was luck. A few thought it was science. But all agreed on one thing: humanity was still alive. The fear that had crushed the world began to lift, replaced by something new. Not confidence, not yet, but a spark of courage. The Trajan confusion high above the earth. In the largest of the alien ships, the Trajan commanders raged. The Supreme Commander, a massive figure with dark armor and glowing blue eyes, slammed his clawed hand against the control table. "Impossible. No world has ever resisted us." His advisors trembled. "Supreme Commander, the troops are gone. Every soldier who touched the ground burned." "Why?" The commander roared. His voice shook the walls. "What curse does this planet hold?" None of them had answers. For centuries, the Trajan had conquered without resistance. They had crushed civilizations with ease. No weapon, no shield, no army had ever stopped them. But here on Earth, their greatest weapon, their own soldiers, were powerless. The commander snarled, "Send more. In stronger armor. They must not fail again." The second wave, more pods fell from the skies. This time the soldiers inside wore thicker armor, reinforced with glowing shields. Their weapons hummed louder, ready to unleash destruction. People across Earth watched in terror as the pods landed. Once again the ground shook. Once again the soldiers emerged. This time they moved quickly, raising their weapons to fire. But the result was the same. The moment their armored boots touched Earth's soil, the glow began. The soldiers screamed in mechanical voices, trying to run back to their pods. But it was too late. Their armor cracked, their bodies turned to embers, and they collapsed into glowing dust. The humans who had been prepared to run now stood still. They stared. They waited. They realized nothing could survive on Earth if it came from the stars. The world reacts in New York. Crowds gathered around the piles of glowing ash. A young girl whispered, "The Earth is eating them." In Paris, a scientist stood with a notebook scribbling furiously. "It is not fire," he muttered. "It is something else. A reaction, a defense we never knew existed." In Cairo, an imam raised his hands toward the sky. "This is a sign. This is protection. This planet is blessed." In Tokyo, news reporters shouted into their cameras, "The invaders cannot survive. Earth itself rejects them." Everywhere, humans began to realize they had something no other civilization might have. A planet that would not allow invaders to conquer it. The first hope inside shelters and bunkers. People came out with new courage. Soldiers lowered their guns, confused but relieved. Leaders who had prepared for surrender now sat straighter in their chairs. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity began to hope. Children laughed as they kicked glowing ashes like snow. Farmers returned to their fields, looking up at the sky with less fear. Families opened their doors and looked at their neighbors with cautious smiles. But the hope was mixed with a new mystery. Why was this happening? What secret did Earth hold? The scientists' discovery in Geneva, a group of international scientists gathered. They reviewed every piece of footage, every measurement, every report. One scientist, a woman with sharp eyes, stood and pointed to the data. "Look at the magnetic field. It is not normal. The field is stronger near the landings." Another scientist frowned. "You mean the Earth's magnetism is reacting to the invaders?" She nodded. "Yes, as if the planet itself knows they are not part of this world." The room fell silent. For the first time, humans began to think the impossible. Was Earth alive in some way they did not understand? The Trajan fear in the great ship above Earth, panic spread among the Trajan ranks. Soldiers refused to enter the pods. Commanders shouted, but their voices carried no authority now. One young Trajan whispered to his commander, "This world, it is cursed. It rejects us. It kills us without battle." The commander silenced him with a glare, but inside he knew the soldier was right. The supreme commander stared at the blue planet below. His eyes burned with anger but also with fear. "This world is not ordinary," he growled. "Something hides within it. Something ancient. We will find it. We must." Humanity stands tall on the ground. Humans began to stand taller. Soldiers who had once prepared to die now smiled. Civilians who had once wept now began to cheer. Crowds gathered in city squares, waving flags, singing songs, and shouting with joy. They had not fired a single shot. They had not launched a single missile. Yet the invaders were burning away before them. For the first time, humanity felt powerful. Not because of weapons, but because of their home. The Earth itself was their greatest protector. The end of the day, as night fell, the glowing embers of the invaders drifted across the skies like fireflies. Children pointed at them, laughing. Adults watched in awe. The world had changed in a single day. In the morning, humanity believed it would die. By night, humanity believed it might survive. But questions remained. Why did the Earth burn the invaders? Was it chance or design? Was it science or something far greater? And most importantly, would the aliens give up or would they keep trying? The answers would come soon. The invasion had changed the world in one day, but it was not over. The Trajan ships still circled the skies like dark clouds. Their commanders raged, their fleets threatened, but their soldiers could not stand on Earth. The moment they touched the ground, they burned into embers. Humanity was alive. But humanity was also confused. Why was this happening? Why was Earth protecting its people in a way no one had ever imagined? The world tries to understand in every country. Scientists worked without rest. Laboratories glowed with lights all night. Teams of experts studied the strange glowing ashes left behind by the invaders. Soldiers guarded the sites, but the scientists were the real warriors now. In Geneva, inside the largest international science center, men and women from every nation gathered. Maps of Earth's magnetic fields were spread across long tables. Screens showed data, videos, and strange readings. Dr. Helena Vargas, a physicist from Spain, stood at the center. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with excitement. "Look," she said, pointing at the data. When the invaders landed, the magnetic field around Earth grew stronger. It reacted as if the planet itself was alive. Another scientist, Dr. Kamal from Pakistan, frowned. "Alive? Do you mean the Earth has intelligence?" "Not intelligence, maybe," Helena answered. "But something is here. Something ancient. Something we never noticed before." The room fell silent. The thought was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. The survivors' stories across the world. People who had witnessed the burning shared their stories. In Brazil, a farmer told the news cameras, "I was ready to die. I saw the alien raise his weapon, but then he turned into fire like dry leaves. The earth saved me." In Japan, a child explained, "I touched the ashes. They disappeared in my hand. I think the world was protecting us." In Egypt, a soldier said, "We never fired a bullet. They fell before us. The pyramids stood strong. Maybe the old ones knew something we forgot." These voices spread across the internet, giving people hope. The fear that had crushed humanity was fading. Now people began to believe Earth was not weak. Earth was powerful. The Trajan anger high above the planet, inside the massive flagship. The Trajan Supreme Commander listened to his advisors with burning rage. "They die every time they touch the surface," one said. "Our soldiers will not go again. They are afraid," another added. "The humans are growing stronger in spirit. If we do not act, they will see us as weak." The commander slammed his fist against the table. The sound shook the room. "We are not weak. No world has ever resisted us. No species has ever survived our conquest. This Earth, it is hiding something. Something old. We must destroy it." But one advisor, older than the rest, spoke carefully. "Supreme Commander, perhaps this planet was never meant to be taken. Perhaps it is a forbidden world." The commander's glowing eyes narrowed. "Forbidden to us? No, nothing is forbidden to the Trajan. If this planet has a secret, we will uncover it." The first tests, the Trajan began new experiments. They sent machines, not soldiers, into the atmosphere. Flying drones scanned the ground, measuring air, soil, and water. Robots stepped onto the surface, carrying samples. At first, the machines did not burn, but then slowly the glow began again. Even the machines cracked and melted into embers. The Trajan engineers watched in horror. "Even our machines are rejected," one whispered. The Supreme Commander growled. "Then it is not only against us. It is against everything from outside. This planet kills all that does not belong. Humanity watches on Earth. Humans saw the drones falling, the robots burning. At first, they feared it meant another attack. But when the alien machines turned to embers, people began to cheer. In London, crowds shouted, "Earth protects us." In India, children sang songs about the planet. In Africa, tribes called the planet Mother Earth and said she had woken from her long sleep. For the first time, the world felt united. Nations that had once fought each other now stood side by side. Everyone knew the truth. They were alive because of their home. The mystery deepens. In Geneva, Dr. Helena and her team worked day and night. They compared ancient texts, old legends, and modern data. They noticed something strange. "Look at the old myths," Helena said. "So many cultures speak of Earth as a protector, as a mother, as a living being. Maybe it was not only poetry. Maybe our ancestors felt something we forgot." Dr. Kamal nodded slowly. "And now, when danger has come from the stars, she protects us again." Another scientist whispered, "But why now? Why not before? Why against them?" No one had answers, but all of them knew one thing. Earth was more mysterious than they had ever believed. A soldier's realization, in Central Park, where the first aliens had burned, Sergeant Daniel Hayes stood guard. He had seen the soldiers collapse into embers with his own eyes. He had not fired a shot, yet he was still alive. As he looked at the ashes on the ground, he whispered to himself, "We always thought we were weak. But maybe we were never alone. Maybe Earth has always been with us." For the first time in his life, he felt proud not only to be a soldier, but also to be human. The Trajan doubt. The Trajan fleet was in chaos. Soldiers refused to land. Engineers failed to find solutions. The Supreme Commander grew more desperate with each hour. In secret, some Trajan officers began to whisper, "This world is cursed. We cannot win. We must leave," others argued. "If we leave, the galaxy will see us as weak. Our empire will collapse." Fear spread through the fleet, something the Trajan had never felt before. They had been conquerors for centuries, but now they faced an enemy they could not fight. A planet itself. The humans grow bolder. On the ground, humans began to act differently. Instead of hiding, they started walking in the open. Soldiers marched through streets with their heads held high. Civilians waved flags from rooftops. In one small town in Italy, people gathered in the square and shouted at the ships above. "You cannot touch us, go home." Their voices rose like thunder echoing across the night. For the first time, the Trajan heard something they had never heard from a conquered species before: defiance. The secret beneath the earth in Geneva, Helena's team made a breakthrough. They discovered strange signals deep within the Earth's magnetic field. The signals were old, older than human civilization. They pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and steady. Helena stared at the data. "It is not random," she whispered. "It is like a message, a pattern. Something is hidden in the Earth itself." The others leaned closer. Dr. Kamal whispered, "Could it be a weapon? A shield?" Helena shook her head slowly. "No, it feels natural, as if the Earth has carried this power from the beginning." The scientists realized something incredible. Earth had always been prepared to defend itself. The invaders had simply awakened the defense. The Supreme Commander's rage when the Trajan learned of their machines failing. The commander roared with fury. "If the Earth itself rejects us," he growled, "then we will destroy the Earth. If we cannot have it, no one will." His officers trembled. They knew what he meant. The fleet would prepare weapons powerful enough to burn the entire planet. But deep in their hearts, even the Trajan wondered, could such weapons succeed? Or would Earth reject them too? Humanity united. For the first time in history, the nations of Earth united. Leaders spoke to each other not as rivals but as allies. Soldiers from different armies trained side by side. Scientists from different countries shared every piece of information. The United Nations broadcast a message to the world. The Secretary General stood tall, his voice strong. "We are one people and this is our home. No matter who comes from the stars, we will stand together. Earth has protected us and we will protect Earth." The speech was played in every city, every town, every village. Humanity felt stronger than ever. The calm before the next storm. For days, the Trajan ships circled the skies but did not land. The world waited. People returned to their homes but kept looking upward. The fear had not vanished, but it was no longer crushing. Children played in the streets again. Farmers worked in their fields. Life continued, though under the shadow of the fleet. Everyone knew the Trajan would try again. The question was not if, but when. A new Strength Sergeant Daniel Hayes stood in Central Park once more. This time he was not afraid. He looked at the sky filled with ships and said to himself, "Let them come. This is our world. They cannot take it." His words were echoed by millions across the planet. Humanity, once divided, now spoke with one voice. Earth had revealed its hidden defense, and humans had discovered their hidden strength. The unknown future. In the silence of space, the Trajan fleet prepared for a new plan. In the depths of Earth, the strange heartbeat continued to pulse. Both sides were waiting. The skies above Earth were full of alien ships, black and endless, like a storm that refused to pass. Yet the planet below was calm in comparison to the chaos above. Humans had survived the first landings. The invaders had burned into embers and the world had begun to hope. But hope was fragile, and fear never disappeared so quickly. The Trajan plan inside the flagship, the Supreme Commander paced. The Trajan were furious, confused, and desperate. Every soldier who touched Earth's surface had been destroyed, and even the most advanced machines had failed. "We must change our approach," the commander said, his voice low but sharp. "The humans are growing bold. Their spirit is rising. They see us as weak. That cannot happen." His advisors suggested new methods: hover shields to prevent touching the ground, energy beams to attack from the air, and drones with no physical contact. The commander accepted them all. His fleet prepared for a new kind of assault, a strike from above. Humanity on edge on the streets of Paris in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. People watched the skies nervously. Soldiers trained, civilians hid supplies, and children clung to their parents. Even though the alien soldiers had burned away, the ships still hung like threats over every city, mountain, and ocean. Sergeant Daniel Hayes stood in the center of Paris with his squad. They had fought nothing yet, but their hearts were strong. "Remember," he told them, "we survived before. Earth protects us. Stay calm, don't panic. Stand your ground." A young soldier, barely 20, whispered, "But what if they find a way to touch us?" Daniel shook his head. Then we face it. But for now, we are safe. The first strike from above, the Trajan began their attack carefully. Hovering ships released beams of energy that sliced through the sky. They avoided the ground, testing the limits of Earth's protection. People in cities across the world felt heat and vibrations. Windows cracked and streets shook. Yet the beams did not touch humans directly. Soldiers ran to protect civilians and buildings took the brunt of the energy. In New York, skyscrapers flickered with damage, but not a single person was harmed by the alien beams. Daniel watched as one of the hover ships tested the energy against a tank. The tank melted instantly, but the ground beneath it remained untouched, showing no sign of danger to humans. "Earth is still protecting us," Daniel whispered. Courage begins to rise. For the first time, humans realize something remarkable. The invaders' weapons, though powerful, could not hurt them as long as they remained on Earth. Soldiers moved openly, helping civilians to safety. Families ventured outside to see the destruction, and relief mingled in their hearts. In Tokyo, crowds cheered as a hover drone disintegrated in the air after trying to land. In Nairobi, people pointed at glowing embers drifting from the sky, a silent reminder that the Trajan could not succeed. Even the smallest gestures showed courage. A child in Cairo waved at the sky. A farmer in Brazil stepped into his field, planting seeds under the alien ships. Humanity began to act as one, not as scattered nations, but as a united force supported by their planet. The Trajan desperation, the Supreme Commander's patience was gone. He had never faced a world that could not be conquered. He ordered attacks with more powerful energy. Bombs dropped from orbit and even attempts to bombard entire cities. Yet, the results were the same. Buildings were damaged, fires burned, but humans on the ground were untouched. Every test showed that Earth was more than a planet. It was a shield, alive in a way no Trajan could understand. An advisor whispered, "Supreme Commander." "Perhaps the planet itself is intelligent." The commander's eyes glowed brighter. "Intelligent or not, it will fall. We will find its weakness, and then we will crush the humans for their insolence." Humanity's first countermeasures. Meanwhile, humans were learning fast. Military engineers studied the glowing ashes of fallen Trajan soldiers and the failed alien machines. They realized that direct contact with the ground was the only danger to the invaders. Using this knowledge, they developed strategies, luring invaders to the ground using decoys and fake settlements, setting traps where alien machines might fall to the soil, protecting civilians by guiding them away from potential danger zones. For the first time, humanity did not just survive, they planned. They were not just waiting for the Trajan to fail, they were helping them fail. The first human victories in Cairo. A small squad of soldiers used empty vehicles to lure alien drones into the sand. When the drones touched the soil, they burned into embers within seconds. The soldiers watched, cheering as the Trajan fleet above began to hesitate. In Brazil, farmers and volunteers lured the invaders toward forests, where the first soldiers had landed. Within moments, the alien soldiers burned again. Humanity began to see that not only was Earth protecting them, but they could also use Earth's defense as a weapon against the invaders. The world slowly understood a powerful truth. They were not weak. They had the greatest ally imaginable, Earth itself. The Trajan realized their mistake above Earth. The Trajan fleet began to panic. The Supreme Commander's voice echoed through the ships, sharp and commanding, but it carried no comfort. "They underestimate humans," he growled. "Their courage, their intelligence, it grows every hour." "You are right, Supreme Commander," an officer replied. "Even without our soldiers, they are learning to fight using the planet itself. They are becoming dangerous. For the first time in their history, the Trajan considered that humans might be more than a simple conquest. They were a species supported by something no other had ever faced, a living planet willing to defend its people. Humanity's unity. In every corner of the world, humans acted as one. Soldiers from different countries shared strategies. Civilians helped each other, moving supplies, guiding the injured, and watching the skies for warning signs. In New York, a woman organized volunteers to check every park, street, and subway station. In Tokyo, a schoolteacher led children to safe zones while teaching them to observe the sky. In Moscow, engineers repaired buildings damaged by alien energy beams. The message was clear. Humans would not only survive, they would protect one another. A young scientist's discovery in Geneva, Dr. Helena Vargas and her team had a breakthrough. They discovered that Earth's magnetic pulses were stronger in areas of human activity. Cities, towns, and even small communities seemed to amplify the protective energy. Helena stared at the monitors. It's like Earth is listening to us. The more humans act with courage, the stronger the protection becomes. Dr. Kamal looked shocked. Are you saying Earth responds to our bravery? Helena nodded. Yes, that's why the aliens fail every time they touch the ground. Our planet and we are one. The discovery spread quickly among world leaders. Humanity had not only survived, but they had a secret weapon. Their courage and unity made Earth stronger. The first mass rebel, the Trajan, tried a large-scale attack. Thousands of soldiers hovered above Europe, ready to descend in synchronized pods. But the moment the first pods touched the ground, they burned into glowing embers. Soldiers and scientists watched from safe distances, their eyes wide. Then something remarkable happened. Civilians who had been hiding began to move forward. They waved, shouted, and even danced near the glowing remains. Their confidence seemed to make the ground stronger. The aliens could not touch a single human. It was as if Earth had fully awakened, responding to human spirit with even greater force. The Supreme Commander's rage, the Supreme Commander slammed his fists into the control panel. His eyes glowed with blue fire. They mock us, he shouted. They do not fear death. They think this is a game. Every time we strike, they grow stronger in spirit. An officer stepped forward. Supreme Commander, they are learning to fight using the planet. Our forces will never succeed if humans unite like this. The commander turned, his gaze sweeping across the fleet. Then we will destroy the world entirely. If we cannot have it, no one can. Yet even he could not predict what Earth would do next. The humans triumph for now. Humans did not need weapons to triumph. Their courage, their unity, and the living power of Earth were enough. People laughed, cried, and celebrated as the invaders failed again and again. From the deserts of Africa to the mountains of South America, from the forests of Europe to the islands of the Pacific, humanity stood together. The fear that had gripped the planet for a single day had turned into something powerful: hope, courage, and defiance. Children played near glowing ashes. Soldiers trained and prepared not in fear but in confidence. Civilians organized support, shared supplies, and strengthened communities. The world was alive, and humans had never felt so strong. The unknown future. Even as humans celebrated, everyone knew the Trajan would not give up. They were a relentless species with centuries of conquest behind them. The next attack would come, more dangerous and more cunning than before. But humans no longer trembled. They had discovered something incredible. Earth was their greatest ally, and their courage made that ally stronger. Sergeant Daniel Hayes looked to the sky one last time before sunset. The alien ships hovered silently, waiting. He clenched his fists. "Come on," he whispered. "We are ready. Earth is with us. You cannot take this world." Above him, the stars began to shine again, and Earth's pulse could almost be felt, steady and strong beneath the people who called it home. The world had changed forever. From the first alien pod that landed to the last glowing ember that floated through the sky, humanity had seen the impossible. The Trajan, feared conquerors of the galaxy, could not touch Earth. The planet itself had risen as humanity's shield, and the people who once trembled in fear now began to stand taller, united by courage, hope, and survival. But victory had not yet been claimed. The Trajan fleet still hung above the planet, dark and endless. Their ships covered every continent, circling in silent fury. Humanity takes a stand in New York. Sergeant Daniel Hayes stood at the edge of Times Square. He looked up at the massive fleet hovering above the city. His squad of soldiers, once trembling with fear, now stood with heads held high. "Listen," Daniel said, his voice carrying across the street. "We have survived. We have seen what this world can do for us. Now it's our turn to stand tall. We don't need to fight them directly. Let the planet do its work and we guide it." Around the world, similar words were spoken. Leaders addressed their nations, calling for unity and courage. Schools, workplaces, and families became centers of organization, preparing for whatever the Trajan might attempt next. The humans had learned a critical truth. The more they acted together with courage, the stronger Earth's defense became. Fear no longer guided them. Hope and determination did. The Trojans' last plan inside the Supreme Commander's flagship, chaos spread. Humans grow stronger with every day, an officer shouted. Their unity, their spirit. It feeds the planet. The commander slammed a claw against the control panel. Then we must act faster. We will no longer rely on soldiers or machines that burn. We will destroy the planet itself. The fleet prepared massive weapons, energy beams capable of melting mountains, missiles that could pierce oceans, and devices designed to collapse the very crust of the Earth. Yet even in this fury, the commander hesitated. He had never faced a planet that actively defended its inhabitants. This world was unlike any other he had conquered. He realized, perhaps too late, that humans were not alone. They had Earth itself as an ally. The first strike, the Trojan launched their most powerful weapons toward major cities across the planet. In London, beams of energy tore through the clouds. In Cairo, massive missiles landed on uninhabited areas, melting rocks and soil. In Tokyo, enormous explosions shook the streets, sending tremors across the city. Yet the humans remained unharmed. Buildings were damaged, trees scorched, rivers boiled near the edges, but the people themselves stood untouched. Every weapon that touched Earth's surface sparked a strange glow and failed, as if the planet rejected the alien attack. Sergeant Hayes watched as one missile, set to obliterate a city block, struck the ground. The moment it landed, it cracked open with light, then fizzled into harmless embers. Humanity could not have believed it in another place, but here, it was real. Earth was alive, and it protected its people. Courage spreads. People began to act boldly. Soldiers guided civilians through damaged areas. Volunteers cleared streets. Communities worked together to repair buildings, provide food, and care for the injured. In every country, humans began to realize something extraordinary. They were not powerless. They were part of the defense itself. Earth reacted to their courage, amplifying its protective power. In New York, a group of firefighters led children out of a building that had been hit by debris. One little boy looked up at the sky and smiled. "They cannot get us," he said. "Not if we stand together," one firefighter replied. In Brazil, farmers led villagers to safe areas while teaching them to observe the Trojan ships from afar. Every action of courage seemed to strengthen the planet's invisible shield. The Trojans' desperation. The Supreme Commander grew more furious with each failed attack. "Destroy the cities. Burn the land! Crush the humans!" he shouted, but his officers shook their heads. "Every time we attack, the humans survive. Earth itself reacts. Our weapons are useless," the commander clenched his claws. "Then we must find the core, the center of this power. We will destroy the heart of the planet and make it bow to us." He sent reconnaissance ships deep underground, attempting to locate the source of the planet's defense. Yet every probe, every machine, every attempt failed. Earth's defense was not just magnetic or mechanical. It was alive, connected to every human above, amplifying courage and unity into a force no Trojan could overcome. Humanity's counter. While the aliens planned destruction, humans began to fight in their own way. Instead of weapons, they used strategy, bravery, and coordination. Entire cities were organized into zones where humans could observe the invaders safely. Teams of volunteers worked to clear debris, care for the injured, and maintain communications. Scientists developed methods to lure alien drones into contact with Earth's surface, knowing that every time they touched the soil, they would turn to embers. Military leaders coordinated this effort, creating zones where humans could survive and the Trojan could fail. For the first time, humans were not merely survivors. They were active participants in the planet's defense. The first large-scale victory in Africa, a combined force of humans created a massive decoy city. Using tents, vehicles, and small structures, they lured thousands of Trojan soldiers into the area. The moment the alien pods touched the ground, they burned into glowing embers. The humans watched in awe and cheered, knowing that Earth and its people had won this battle without a single direct confrontation. The Trojan fleet above hesitated. This was no longer a simple invasion. They were facing a planet that could fight back, guided by humans who were united in courage. A new understanding, Dr. Helena Vargas, observing from Geneva, had a revelation. She spoke to world leaders via video conference. "Earth's defense is linked to us," she explained. "Every act of courage strengthens the planet. Every unified effort, every decision to protect life amplifies its power. The Trajan cannot touch us because Earth and humanity are connected. World leaders listened, their eyes wide with awe. Humanity had never realized the depth of its bond with the planet. It was not just survival, it was co-creation of a living defense, an alliance that no invader could break. The Supreme Commander's last attempt in the flagship. The Supreme Commander prepared his final assault. Ships released massive energy beams, missiles, and strange devices designed to obliterate the planet. Yet every strike failed. Energy beams cracked and fizzled before reaching humans. Missiles melted into harmless embers. Machines and drones collapsed into glowing dust. Even the Supreme Commander could not touch the ground without fear. Every action against Earth failed, and his fleet began to retreat slowly, unable to confront a force they could not understand. For the first time in history, the Trajan, conquerors of countless worlds, faced defeat not by weapons, not by armies, but by a planet and its people. Humanity's triumph in city squares, villages, forests, and fields humans celebrated. Children played among the glowing embers of fallen invaders. Soldiers smiled and hugged. Families thanked neighbors for helping them survive. Even in the worst-hit areas where buildings had been damaged, humans rebuilt. They knew that Earth would protect them as long as they acted together, with courage and unity. The world had risen, not through fear or destruction, but through connection with each other, and connection with the planet that had chosen to protect them. The Trajan retreat. The Supreme Commander realized there was no victory to be won. Every attempt to conquer Earth had failed. Every strategy had been stopped. His fleet began to retreat, slowly moving away from the planet. The Trajans' arrogance had been broken. For the first time in their history, they were defeated not by a civilization, but by a world itself. Above Earth, their ships disappeared into the darkness of space. Humanity watched, knowing that they had survived something no species before them had endured. Earth and humanity, Sergeant Daniel Hayes, stood atop a hill, looking at the night sky as the last ships vanished. He felt the ground beneath his feet strong and steady. He smiled, knowing that Earth had not only saved them, it had chosen humanity as its guardians. Children ran to him, laughing and pointing at the glowing embers drifting in the wind. Daniel lifted one little boy onto his shoulders. "See," he said, "this world is ours. We are alive, we are strong, and together we are unstoppable." Across the planet, the same scene repeated. Humans standing tall, Earth glowing softly beneath them, and a future that once seemed impossible now filled with hope. The beginning of a new era. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had seen the impossible. The planet that had cradled them for millennia had revealed its hidden strength, defending them against invaders from the stars. Leaders, scientists, soldiers, and civilians alike realized something powerful. Their survival depended not only on courage but on unity, care, and connection with the planet. Earth had awakened, and humans had risen with it. The Trajan were gone, at least for now. Humanity was free. But the story of this day, the day when millions of alien invaders burned into embers, would never be forgotten. It would be remembered for generations as the day Earth chose its people, and humanity rose to meet the challenge of the universe with courage, unity, and life. The final thought Sergeant Daniel Hayes whispered to himself as he looked at the stars. "We are not alone. We have Earth, we have each other, and we will never be conquered." The planet's pulse continued,